Hello, gentle listener. This is not a normal Nocturnal Transmissions episode, but rather a little slice from the black, unctuous cake, otherwise known as our latest Patreon episode. Every third transmission we release is just for our beloved Patreon subscribers. 2 for the world at large, then 1 just for our fellow tenders of the dark flame, is how we do it. If you like what you hear and you would like to have access to the story in full, along with all the other stories tucked away in our Patreon-exclusive back catalogue, just visit patreon.com/Nocturnal Transmissions and sign up. You'll find a range of tiers there to match whatever level of enthusiasm you bring to the part. Anyway, whether you are considering joining us or not, we do hope you enjoy this little cutlet, as it were, lacerated from our latest offering. And on that note, let's have at it. When he recovered, the glorious vision had vanished. He was in darkness. He doubted whether it was not a dream that had passed before his sleeping fancy. But gradually his scattered thoughts returned, and with them came remembrance. Yes, he had looked once again upon the gorgeous splendor of nature. Once again his eyes had trembled beneath their veiled lids at the sun's radiance, and sought repose in the soft verdure of the olive tree, or the gentle swell of undulating waves. Oh, that he were a mariner, exposed upon those waves to the worst fury of storm and tempest, or a very wretch, loathsome with disease, plague-stricken, and his body one leprous contagion from crown to sole, hunted forth to gasp out the remnant of infectious life beneath those verdant trees, so he might shun the destiny upon whose edge he tottered. Vain thoughts like these would steal over his mind from time to time in spite of himself, but they scarcely moved it from that stupor into which it had sunk, and which kept him during the whole night like one who has been drugged with opium. He was equally insensible to the calls of hunger and of thirst, though the third day was now commencing since even a drop of water had passed his lips. He remained on the ground, sometimes sitting, sometimes lying, at intervals sleeping heavily, and when not sleeping, silently brooding over what was to come, or talking aloud in disordered speech of his wrongs, of his friends, of his home, and of those he loved, with a confused mingling of all. In this pitiable condition, the 6th and last morning dawned upon Vivencio. If dawn it might be called, the dim, obscure light which faintly struggled through the one solitary window of his dungeon. He could hardly be said to notice the melancholy token, and yet he did notice it, for as he raised his eyes and saw the portentous sign, there was a slight convulsive distortion of his countenance. But what did attract his notice, and at the sight of which his agitation was excessive, was the change his iron bed had undergone. It was a bed no longer. It stood before him the visible semblance of a funeral couch or bier. When he beheld this, he started from the ground, and in raising himself suddenly struck his head against the roof, which was now so low that he could no longer stand upright. "God's will be done," was all he said, as he crouched his body and placed his hand upon the bier, for such it was. The The iron bedstead had been so contrived by the mechanical art of Ludovico Sforza that as the advancing walls came in contact with its head and feet, a pressure was produced upon concealed springs, which, when made to play, set in motion a simple, though ingeniously contrived machinery that effected the transformation. The object was, of course, to heighten in the closing scene of this horrible drama all the feelings of anguish which the preceding ones had aroused. For the same reason, the last window was so made as to admit only a shadowy kind of gloom rather than light, that the wretched captive might be surrounded, as it were, with every seeming preparation for approaching death. Vivenzio seated himself on his bier. Then he knelt and prayed fervently, and sometimes tears would gush from him. The air seemed thick, and he breathed with difficulty, or it might be that he fancied it was so, from the hot and narrow limits of his dungeon, which were now so diminished that he could neither stand up nor lie down at his full length. But his wasted spirits and oppressed mind no longer struggled within him. He was past hope, and fear shook him no more. Happy if thus revenge had struck its final blow, for he would have fallen beneath it almost unconscious of a pang. But such a lethargy of the soul, after such an excitement of its fiercest passions, had entered into the diabolical calculations of Tolfi, and the fell artificer of his designs had imagined a counteracting device. The tolling of an enormous bell struck upon the ears of Vivenzio. He started. It beat but once. The sound was so close and stunning that it seemed to shatter his very brain, while it echoed through the rocky passages like reverberating peals of thunder. This was followed by a sudden crash of the roof and walls, as if they were about to fall upon and close around him at once. Vivenzio screamed and instinctively spread forth his arms as though he had a giant's strength to hold them back. They had moved nearer to him and were now motionless. Vivenzio looked up and saw the roof almost touching his head, even as he sat cowering beneath it, and he felt that a further contraction of but a few inches only must commence the frightful operation. That concludes our teaser episode. A quick note, if you've decided you would indeed like to check out our Patreon subscriber page and reap the rewards, please go to patreon.com to find us, or use the link on our website, nocturnaltransmissions.com.au. We recommend you don't use the Apple Patreon app, for the simple reason it will cost you more. The Android app is fine, apparently. Okay, there's a little bit of an insider tip for you. And that concludes the concluding of our Patreon exclusive episode teaser.